Alright YouTube, so you guys all know I'm a big Star Wars fan, and as this new movie StarFighter, debuting in May of 2027, is coming out, little news and bits and pieces are coming as the month goes on, and today big news dropped that Amy Adams and Aaron Pierce, who are an actress and actor respectively, are in this movie in the cast, which I'm super happy about. I know Aaron is going to be the next Green Lantern for DC Comics, so I'll start by talking about his character. I haven't seen him in many movies, or at least not that I can remember, but he definitely does have like a sort of cool Star Wars vibe look to him. I don't know how to explain it, but I guess him being the next Green Lantern for James Gunn sort of translates well to Star Wars. I don't know, it's just my opinion, but I'm sure he'll do great nonetheless. You know, not really too relevant to this vlog, but I figured I'd make some cool props with Star Wars or sci-fi aliens. So, you know, these are cool little creatures with galactic bodies. I think something like this, aliens looking like, could fit well in Star Wars, especially with the StarFighter universe, because I presume it's going to happen a lot in space and a lot of starfighting scenes. You know, as for Amy Adams, I do remember her being Lois Lane in Henry Cavill's Superman movies, but I personally didn't care for her character much in those movies, but I do know she's a great actress, as seen in a movie that came out the same year as Batman vs. Superman known as Arrival, which is, funny enough, also a sci-fi movie and relates to aliens, but a little bit more grounded and realistic. Sort of gives you kind of like a Dark Knight trilogy version of Star Wars, so, you know, fits like a glove in this series. I admit I'm not terribly familiar with a lot of actors and actresses' work off the top of my head, unless they're part of a big series, but, you know, which case I don't think many of these actors and actresses are, but, you know, I recognize them, and I'm super excited for this series because I saw the look of Ryan Gosling's character behind the scenes and an image in black and white, and it looks super cool. So this series is just going to be, or this trilogy rather, I'm really excited for, so I'll continue talking about it. This next character, Lego, taking a little break from StarFighter, he has, I was going to say 4 arms, but technically 3, technically just 2 because this is just an action shot. But speaking of 4-armed characters, I'm hoping we see a character similar to General Grievous, maybe one of his species, because I know this series happens after the sequel trilogy, but I don't recall seeing a character like General Grievous's species in the sequel trilogy, but it has been a while since I watched them, so, you know, I'm sure his species didn't go extinct, so, you know, why not bring them back, you know, good old reference. Next character kind of reminds me of Ryan Gosling's character in this movie, or at least how I imagine he'll be, sort of a starfighter, you know, star pilot I meant to say, it's embarrassing, but nonetheless a really cool protagonist with cool weapons and maybe the best pilot that this Star Wars franchise has ever seen. Of course, I've talked about the big 3 characters, Mia, Matt, and Ryan, which are all part of this trilogy, and, you know, I made a vlog talking about my theory of Matt Smith's character, which I think will more than likely almost certainly be a villain, if not the main villain. I know him, I recognize him from many series, but haven't watched many of the series, but I think a lot of them are sci-fi, so, you know, as I've said, not to beat the dead horse, but fits like a glove. And speaking of gloves, this is an alien paparazzi, alien on vacation. But, you know, speaking of gloves, I do think it would be cool if Ryan Gosling had, like, you know, the gloves that were based on sort of the original trilogy star pilot that Luke Skywalker had. I think, you know, from, actually, I was going to say, I think I've seen that he had the same outfit, but now I remember that was fan art, but just shows that sometimes fan art is really convincing. But, you know, I knew it was like fan art when I first saw it, and it was intentionally fan art, but really excited to see what kind of outfit his character has, because I gotta take another look at the black and white image. I admit I didn't look at it too long, but being the big Star Wars fan I am, that just sort of burst me up with excitement when I first saw it, so I'll do another look. But to conclude, I think Mia's character will probably be maybe a little bit of an anti-hero, sort of the Catwoman or Harley Quinn of Star Wars, because, you know, she sort of has that vibe of being, like, you know, both an attractive but psycho character, at least seen in many of her movies and a lot of the A24 ones, so, you know, I have no complaints about her whatsoever. I enjoy her movies a lot. I enjoy A24 movies too. As for the director, Shawn Levy, I admit I do recognize the name, but I'm not terribly familiar with his work, or at least, like I said, I'm bad with names to faces, to movies, to directors. I kind of just know movies as movies, not really, like, you know, I don't think too much of it logistically, which maybe I should, but I have heard that he is a good director. I don't know what else he worked on off the top of my head, so feel free to tell me in the comments below if there's something I'm really missing, because I'm all for movie suggestions. And I did hear someone say, although this was just a random comment on the internet, that this is looking like potentially the best Star Wars movie since Revenge of the Sith, which you can only imagine how excited that makes me. And speaking of Revenge of the Sith, I hope we get some more updates about the 4-hour original cut. Until then, Thank you guys so much for watching. Stay tuned for more soon. Oh yeah, one last thing. I know before this movie comes out in 2027, we're getting a Star Wars movie in 2026, A Mandalorian and Grogu, which may also debut a few other movies I heard as a possible trilogy, but hopefully they don't milk that, and hopefully Mando's torch gets passed on, but, you know, because we don't want to milk him too much in the franchise. But until then, I'm really excited. I'm so happy Star Wars is coming back to the cinema. Even though I love the streaming, I'm really just, more of a cinema goer. And until then, this cast is awesome. Stay tuned for more soon. Goodbye.